The Bant deck has not only Restoration Angel, but also Advent of the Worm. You can play, like, you can turn the corner so quickly with this deck to go from the sort of control to the aggro, you know, where you're staving off the early turn aggression and developing your board, and then boom, they're like under 3-turn clock, you know.
So we're going to see an Augur Bolus here from James. He's going to start the show this way. We see a Rewind, a Hallowed Fountain, and a Temple Guard. So Rewind's going to go to the grip. He does have, how many copies? 2 copies of that card in his deck that Gerry needs to be wary of. I'm sure Gerry's going to pick up pretty quickly on what he's up against. Bat Flash, a deck that I know you've written about.
Yes.
Matt Costa played in Somerset and kind of put that deck on the map. He also wrote an article about it. We haven't seen it have a lot of success yet, but I think it's kind of undeniable that at some point we're going to see a deck that's like this, depending on what the build looks like, going to see some success at some point.
Yeah, Rewind is a card that really picked up a lot of steam with the Advent of the Worm. It's the perfect follow-up threat. You know, the old Flash decks used to play a couple, but, you know, all you could follow it up with was an Angel, which you don't even necessarily want to cast on turn 4, but Advent just slamming a Worm is pretty awesome.
So we're going to see a Thought Scour here from James. You saw Gerry take a Searing Spear to take care of that Augur Bolus. Does not want any Restoration Angel shenanigans, have to worry about any of that stuff. So Thought Scour is going to target Gerry instead of James. He's going to turn over a Supreme Verdict and a Hallowed Fountain here. James is going to play his 4th land, which is the critical land in this deck because he can represent basically everything.
Yeah. All the counter magic, all the card draw, the Advent, the Restoration Angel, you know, 4 is a scary, scary number from the Bant Flash deck.
And we're just going to see a pretty innocent play. He's going to cycle Azorius Charm. He draws a Selesnya Charm off of that. The thing James is really trying to do right now is build a little bit of velocity, make sure he hits all his land drops, and he plays a Ghost Quarter for the turn.
Fancy.
Not really used to seeing that land in these 3-colored decks at this point, but, you know, it does take care of some non-basics. Takes care of your Moorland Haunts of the world, some other things that really, you know, aren't that popular yet, but it's nice to have that utility if you can afford it.
Yeah, and the Bant Flash deck actually has a bunch of bounce, usually unsummons and Simic Charms. Looks like just Simic Charm here. So you can actually, like, use your Ghost Quarter to get rid of Cavern. Like, they cavern out a creature, you bounce it, kill the Cavern with Ghost Quarter, and then you can counter the creature on the recast. But Selesnya Charm, making it a night, going beat down, not exactly going to work against the, you know, all removal control deck, but you have to sort of start exchanging resources at some point so that you can get to the point where you're at the Revelation versus Revelation end game. And that really favors the player who's making more land drops, which at this point is James Garner.
So you see Thompson is stuck on lands a little bit, but he has drawn a Hallowed Fountain for the turn, deciding if he wants to play it tapped or untapped. You see Gerry's hand right now. He does have a Rev in his hand. He also has an Essence Scatter, a couple copies of Syncopate, and a Turn and Burn kind of hanging out over there. As you said, it is a very removal-heavy build. This is what we saw from Kenyeo last week. Gerry's cut down on some of the removal a little bit, but you're still going to find 3 Pillar of Flames for the influx, probably due to Aaron Barich's win of Stringaroo Geist and Voice of Resurgence. You see 2 Searing Spears, 2 Turn and Burn, 2 War Leader's Helix, 3 Supreme Verdicts, to go along with a couple of Azorius Charms and some counter magic and that Detention Sphere that you brought up. As we're going to see a Rev for 2 here from Gerry. A lot of removal now in these decks as you see Syncopate take care of the Revelation. Do you like the removal-heavy approach moving forward?
I do. I think that, you know, there's so many aggressive decks and sort of creature-based decks right now that having more removal is important. Like you said, Pillar against Voice and Stringaroo Geist is really, really important. And it also is good against, like, the Naya Blitz human decks, you know. It's just really efficient. Same with War Leader's Helix. There we saw kind of an awkward exchange. James wanted to end step a Snapcaster, but he had already let Gerry discard the Pillar, so we were done with Gerry's turn. Now, on Gerry's next end step, we see the Snapcaster Mage, which is going to get Essence Scattered. I have to say, the way that this game has played out, I think that James sort of missed an opportunity to capitalize on the fact that Gerry was missing land drops for a while there. Gerry, Revelation for 2, and James syncopated the Revelation. I think that that was a good opportunity for James to actually just cast the Revelation for like 3 or 4 or whatever and get up that way. But he's choosing to play it more controlling, try and keep Gerry buried, which, you know, that's kind of a scary proposition to let Gerry sort of just draw a card every turn, you know? He's going to find his way out eventually.
Yeah, Matthias Hunt put it pretty well last weekend. You know, he said oftentimes Mana Screw beats Mana Flood because eventually you're going to draw lands and you already have spells.
Yep. When both players draw out of it, the Mana Screwed player is going to have as many spells as they had cards in hand, whereas the Mana Flood player is just drawing their 1 spell a turn, you know?
So now we're going to see the burn half of turn and burn, trying to take care of the Snapcaster Mage from Thompson's side. One thing to also bring up here too, AJ, is that you're going to see James cast a Simic Charm. We'll see what mode it's going to be. Probably the +3/+3.
All three modes actually protect the Snapcaster.
All three modes are quite good right now in Snapcaster, but it's going to be more damage. But you see the Thought Scours targeting Gerry instead of targeting James. James has Snapcaster Mages in his deck. He does have 3 copies, and you saw in that second Thought Scour from James that Gerry turned over a Think Twice. Does that deter you from targeting Gerry with Thought Scour, or should he always be going towards the opponent in this game that's going to probably end up going quite long?
It's less. The Think Twice isn't really a factor, because if you end up milling a Think Twice, like all you're really doing is saving your opponent 2 mana. Like you're not actually giving them a bonus card, because they would have drawn the card from the Think Twice, the front side of the Think Twice, and then flashed it back anyway. Versus drawing a random card that isn't the Think Twice because you milled it. So you're not actually like generating any card advantage for them. You are saving them a couple mana, but I think that's a reasonable price to pay. You know, potentially saving your opponent 2 mana. That's not likely to matter that much, so that you can get the advantage of milling them versus yourself.
Sure. So you see Snapcasters are going to trade here. We'll figure out what Gerry did target, but we're going to flash back a Think Twice here. That was milled from that Thought Scour, so Jerry's going to get a little deeper into his deck. He's going to untap. He's going to draw, see if he's able to find a land.
And once again, James not taking that opportunity where Jerry's tapped low to get his Revelation off.
Yeah, you know, this is, you know, kind of a case, excuse me, of where instants need to be played as instants. That's what a lot of people look at here. But you can just have like a tap out war, because there's not a lot that Gerry can probably do to punish you. But then again, you know, you were able to say that pre-Dragon's Maze, but now that Aetherling's a card, if he was to tap out on his turn for a huge Revelation, Gerry slams down an Aetherling with a blue mana up, I think we're looking at a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be able to, you know, get your Revelation, and you need to make sure that your Revelation resolves.
Yeah.
We saw there, Gerry had the counter, and while James had a counter back, it was a Syncopate, and Gerry had 3 mana up.
Yep.
You know, that's like the worst time to use your Revelation. Either you want to wait until Jerry's tapped out, or until you can at least counter back. He could do neither. Now he doesn't have his Revelation, and he's going to have to kill Gerry straight up. You know, he doesn't have the massive influx of cards. But you know, the all removal deck is not going to be beaten down, and the Aetherling deck isn't going to be sort of out late gamed. You know, you really needed that influx of cards and the life from the Sphinx's Revelation.
So now we are going to see Jace, Architect of Thought here from Thompson. Garner is going to be reaching towards his man. Looks like we're going to have a bit of a fight over this.
Ooh,
it's gonna be a
big Syncopate.
So that's going to take care of that. I think, again, that's probably an exchange that Jerry's happy with, is he's going to Detention Sphere a token.
Less happy with that exchange.
Yeah, but you know, he just wants to keep his life total pretty high. Garner now has the ability to resolve another huge Revelation. You see his hand of Advent of the Worm, Revelation, and an unsummon in his hand right now. So he has the opportunity. Yet again, as you had mentioned, Gerry has 1 mana up. He can pull the trigger and just resolve something huge right now.
Looks like he's finally taking the opportunity. Gerry tapped down to 1 mana. He's going to Revelation.
Just for 4.
4. Represent the Advent. I think that's fine. I'd probably just go for the more cards, though. But, you know, it's obvious what he's thinking to use the Advent. And now that he drew an untapped land, he can also Snapcaster and, you know, use a counter from the yard. So he's got a lot of options available to him. Jerry's kind of been stuck with just, like, all removal in his hand all game, which hasn't been that great. But that's not necessarily going to matter all that much if he can force an Aetherling through.
And Aetherling does resolve. Here's an Advent of the Worm for Garner. And this is something, AJ, that I think we're going to see a lot over the course of this weekend, which is Aetherling's resolving with mana available. This was the premier threat at the Pro Tour 2 weeks ago when we were in San Diego. Oftentimes, when I was walking around doing coverage, or if you guys were watching at home, you would see an Aetherling resolve in the constructed portion. You would see an opponent go, I don't know what I'm going to do about that, because I can't kill it once it's in play. And they would ride it to victory, and you'd have to go through ridiculous hoops to try to stop that thing from killing you.
Yeah, you have to hope that they got unlucky so that you were able to 3-for-1 yourself.
Yes.
It's like the only way that Aetherling ever got dealt with.
And so now you're going to see Gerry. That's a 5/5 worm coming in. You know, it's a 4-mana 5/5 worm coming in. Aetherling's going to block. Jerry's going to use the -1/+1 to make it a 3/6. And say, all right, you know, so here's this.
Yeah.
You know, I take no damage right now. I'm trumping your worm token, which is what your deck is basically built around.
Yeah. And even if James has 1 answer to the Aetherling, it can just blink out. Jerry takes 5 and then untaps all of his mana with another Aetherling in play. James does happen to have two things. He has the Unsummon and the Azorius Charm, which he sequenced them correctly, sort of bait him with the Unsummon and then deny him a draw step.
Yep. And he's going to get the 5 damage across too because of Trample. So
Trample,
overall, this is a very good turn here for Garner to be able to delay that problem that is an Aetherling.
Yeah. The question is whether he's going to be able to close it out before, Gerry just plays his Aetherling again and takes over. It looks like he does have the Snapcaster and is going to have enough mana this turn to snap a Syncopate for enough to counter the Aetherling. So Gerry's likely going to have to just wrath away that Worm token. And that is what happens. Is James going to pull the trigger on another?
It looks like he is. Yep. So here's a second Advent of the Worm. That's going to resolve. 5/5 does come into play here. You see Gerry's hand of multiple Aetherlings. He has 2 Aetherlings, 2 Syncopates. Neither card doing very much right now.
Yeah. I mean, this is... What we're seeing is, aggressive line. Just trying to finish Gerry off right now, and it works.
He's gonna Snapcaster that Simic Charm, give his Worm +3/+3, and dare Gerry to have either a Bounce Spell or an Azorius Charm, something like that. He doesn't have it, so Garner is going to be up a game here with Bat Flash against Blue-White-Red Control, in which Gerry basically had some trouble turning the corner there, and you saw, even though the Revelations there for Garner were only for 4, where they could have been for a lot more, it ends up working out and it puts him up a game.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that happened was the Revelation, the second or third Revelation that James cast finally resolved, and that was enough to carry him home, even against an Aetherling. Gerry just didn't have the time or the life total to, use as a resource to get to the point where his Aetherling can take over the game,
So we're going to take a look at Thompson's sideboard first, as he is going to be on the play here for game number 2. 3 Clones, 1 War Leader's Helix, a Renounce the Guilds, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Negate, 1 Dispel, 1 Jace Memory Adept, 1 Ghost Quarter, 2 Izzet Static Casters, and 1 Pillar of Flame. I think there are plenty of cards that are going to come out here on Gerry's side. The question is what cards are going to come in, because we see a card like War Leader's Helix, which looked fantastic last weekend and is great in this red, this red heavy metagame that we're in right now, but it doesn't really kill very much from Garner's deck.
Yeah.
So, that's a card that he has 2 of in his main deck, 1 in his sideboard. That's probably going to leave. You look at Renounce the Guilds, a card that does seem pretty powerful on the surface, but the Worm token that Advent of the Worm makes is green, not green and white.
Yeah, you might think that it is a multicolored card, but it is. It makes a mono-green Worm.
So that's going to stay on the bench.
Yes.
We look at the Rest in Peace, not really what he wants to be doing. Gerry has Snapcaster Mages of his own. We know that James does, so those are probably going to stay on the bench. But you do see the 2 Negates and 1 Dispel. I think those are certainly going to join
pretty
us.
Obvious in the Sphinx's Revelation matchup to bring in the counters for the Sphinx's Revelations.
Yep. The Jace Memory Adept also going to join us, and then I think the Pillar of Flame stays on the bench. The Ghost Quarter, maybe he boards that in because he wants an additional mana source, especially because he had mana troubles in the last game.
The Pillar might actually come in because as we look at James Garner's sideboard, one of the most important cards in these control mirrors is Voice of Resurgence.
Sure.
Pretty big threat, pretty hard to remove, pretty hard to deal with, and the fact that it's in play, it's just like an enchantment that says they can't cast stuff on your turn unless they have a Wrath in their hand.
Sure.
And at the same time, it attacks for 2 and kind of shrugs off most removal besides the Pillar of Flames. So those are definitely coming in from James, as well as his own counter magic in the form of 2 Dispels and an additional Dissipate. So you might have to have Pillars just to fight the Voices so that you can play straight up.
Sure.
And that's sort of the big difference between these decks, is that the Bant deck is much more of a flash deck that's willing to play on the opponent's turn. It's got the Voices and the instant speed threats and more counters, whereas Gerry's kind of the sort of dopey-ish control deck that's just like, all right, I hope that I have like the removal for your guy, but like I have to play it on my turn after I take a hit, so like his life total is going to be a little, that's kind of scary to be like at a low life total against a deck that can just make a 5/5.
Yeah, that's definitely scary.
And not to mention the fact that Gerry's going to have to be tapping out on his turn for his own threats in the form of Aetherling. I mean, again, this is all sort of secondary to the primary sub-game, which is Sphinx's Revelation.
Yes.
The matchup really is going to come down to Revelation versus Revelation, with counter magic sort of dictating the flow of that sub-game. And that's plan A, win the Revelation war. But once you get past that, where like, you each have enough counters for the other one, or you don't have the time to cast the Revelation necessarily, because like if you tap out then they rev for more, you sort of come into the sub game of like, all right, well, creature versus removal, sort of aggro control, like counter slivers-esque flash deck versus the classical all removal sorcery speed control deck. And I have to say, I think that Bant Flash actually has the better of this, that sort of matchup, that sort of pairing. So let's see how Gerry can sort of mitigate that advantage and push his own advantage in the form of the Aetherling endgame.
So you see both players are going to keep their hands here. Thompson going to start off with a Steam Fence into Glacial Fortress. You see Garner with the Hollow Fountain. He's going to play Hinterland Harbor. Now we're going to see a Voice. We're going to see an Augur Bolas. Okay.
Augur a lot less scary.
That is true, but it does go past the Voice of Resurgence. It's going to give Garner a Syncopate. Also going to put a land on the bottom and pass the turn back. You see Thompson draws a Negate, plays a Glacial Fortress, and does pass the turn back. So basically, a little bit of draw go here. James has a small clock that's, for the most part, pretty relevant, but, the damage does add up over the course of the game. So, Augur pecking away, while it may not be the biggest deal, at some point, Gerry's going to have to do something to take care of that, as we saw the last game with a Searing Spear.
Yep. And, having the opponent spend an entire card and mana on your Augur that already hit a card is, pretty sweet. That is the definition of value.
Now you're going to see Garner play that Temple Garden untapped, so we're at that 4-mana sweet spot yet again. Counter Magic, Rewind being represented, Advent of the Worm being represented. Plenty of different things that James Garner can do, but Gerry looks like he's reaching. You saw him reach for that Jace Memory Adept, and he's just going to slam this down and dare James to have something. We know he has Syncopate, but Gerry just wants to get that over with.
I actually think that, does James have double green? It's possible that he should have just made a worm and killed the Jace, right?
We'll take a look. He does have double green, Hinterland Harbor and Temple Garden, so he could have done that, actually.
Gerry kind of using it as bait, and it kind of working. I mean, Gerry knew he had the Syncopate, so he's like, I'm happy to trade this for a Syncopate at this point. But, yeah, instead of that, see, the Jace is the bait for the Syncopate to get the Aetherling out there.
And so the big thing, too, there is that imagine right now if James doesn't Syncopate that Jace and he just plays Advent of the Worm to kill it.
He has the Syncopate for the Aetherling and a huge board.
Well, actually, no. So Gerry has a Cavern of Souls to push that through, to push the Aetherling through.
Okay.
That was a 6 land. But imagine if he has a 5/5 this turn, that killed the Jace, and then he would have played another Advent of the Worm because he has one in his hand, and he still has a Syncopate on reserve. Yeah. That's the difference. So you'd have 2 5/5s coming across right now.
A much better position for him.
Which is way better for what he's trying to accomplish, as you're going to see in a Azorius Charm now. Looks like it's going to take care of this. Yes, it is.
Well, temporarily at least.
Yeah.
Push 7 damage through, but I can assure you that Aetherling is coming right back down with a blue mana up. And the question is, how long can Gerry sort of do this at only 8 life facing down, quite a bit of damage.
And you see James played his 4th land, so here's another Advent of the Worm.
That's actually just straight up lethal.
Yeah, I don't know if Gerry gets out of this. He's looking at Negate, and I think it lands in his hand.
No, that's just straight up lethal.
Yeah, that's just straight up lethal. Yeah, so James Garner wins game 2 very quickly over Gerry Thompson. He's going to win this match 2-0. Bant Flash taking down blue-white-red control. And, you kind of look at the